Okay. All right, guys. You see the thumbnail? Today, I have a short one for you. As you saw what's on the thumbnail, being alone versus being lonely. Many people are the facing and grappling with being alone, right? And being lonely. Now, we often know that people tend to get in these crises where they have these stints of loneliness. And it can get so overwhelming at times that it can go in a state of depression. And that depression can be very intense. Now, I thought today is a fitting day to actually talk about this. It's the holiday season, and with all due respect, I don't celebrate Christmas, so I must be honest. But it's the season spirits, and people want to be with family, and they want to be with their loved ones. And being that they want to be with family and loved ones, they tend to get in that mode where when a loved one is gone, possibly deceased, they start feeling alone and wondering where their loved one is, like where in the ether, the universe, their loved one is. And that's kind of a feeling to grapple with, right? When you are sitting down, and for those of you that pray, you're sitting down praying, asking yourself, where in this vast thing we call the universe, I call it the ultraverse, you know, where is my loved one? Because remember, your loved one passed away, and that loved one might be a grandma. And for those of you that grandma is like the matriarchy of the family, and grandma spoil the grandchildren. Most grandma spoil their grandchildren, not all, but some. I can tell you some of the things I couldn't get away with. I see the grandchildren got away with it. My mom is recently deceased, right? And this morning I was kind of like wondering, where is she? Yeah, you know, that thought went to my mind, you know, and I thought, like, I wonder how many other people are feeling the same thing. I wonder how many other people are asking themselves where their loved ones might be. You might have maybe you had a divorce, and the holiday season is up on us, and your former spouse is off somewhere, and that feeling of loneliness come upon you. And however you deal with it, you deal with it. It can be psychological for some people, emotional for some people, but that feeling really gets to the heart of how some people react and some people feel about things, right? If you want to call in and talk about your experience, you may do so. The phone line is 1-844-788-6366. So I'm going to leave the phone line open, and if anyone wants to call in, they can call in. All right? It's hard on the psyche. It's a mental anguish on someone. It can even go so far as where it has, like, it causes serious, severe trauma in the brain. People actually unalive themselves for feeling loneliness, deep loneliness, right? So when these things happen where people unalive themselves for feeling deep loneliness, it can be intense. It can seriously be intense. And that intensity will cause people to either do themselves off or do someone else off, right? I wonder if some of these shootings that have recently been happening, was it because of loneliness or because of anxiety from something happening making them feel alone, right? So there's a difference between being lonely and being alone, right? So I am going to pull up the verses: being lonely versus being alone, right? So let me read this here. Being alone is a physical state of solitude, a factual absence of others which can be chosen for peace or work. Loneliness, however, is a painful emotional state of perceived isolation. Perceived isolation. So that's a mental thing. A feeling of lacking desired connection, and can strike even when surrounded by people. There are people that are actually married and feel lonely in the marriage. They feel lonely in the marriage. And so because they feel lonely in the marriage, they will go out and cause infidelity in the marriage. This is just how things happen. Sometimes people feel lonely, and what they do, they go out and spend unnecessarily. Right? They go out and they spend unnecessarily when they're feeling lonely. That's part of what people do. So let's continue. Let me back up. Even when surrounded by people, you can enjoy being alone but feeling lonely in a crowd, and can be alone but feel content, as loneliness is about the quality of your connections, not just presence. So when someone have someone that they perceive to be with them, and on the other hand, the other person may perceive that in the same relationship that they are lonely, right? So it's the holiday season, and people are going through these kind of different emotions. So I thought I wanted to share that, talk about that. And let me make sure I pull this up. All right. And let me bring this back. And for me, just wanted to talk about this briefly. You guys can let me know what your feelings are. What are you going through? 844-788-6366. It's the holiday season. You might be with loved ones and can call in. But if you can, Be my guest. All right. So let me play a bit of an audio that I have here. And so
How can somebody escape the victim mindset?
Well, so if I was talking to a person like that, I would say, first of all, I get it, because I've been to that place myself. I mean, I've had moments when I didn't think life was worth living, and I imagined my own suicide. Never that I planned it or I was going to do it, but I kind of fantasized it, you know? I've been to those places, so I get it. Secondly, I would say, I feel that the world's against me. That's not a feeling, it's a belief, okay? If you have that belief, it's because at some point you had that experience, but you're not having that experience right now. That experience was that of a child who was helpless and alone. So,
so there you hear. Some people, children, a lot of children feel alone. You can have siblings. You can have one, two, three, four, five, however much siblings. And even though you have siblings, let's say you are the middle child, you will feel alone because you're fighting for that position. So you have the first, you are the middle child, and then the baby. The baby gets all the attention because that's the baby. And the firstborn already knows the firstborn, so they get less. They don't get as much affection as the baby, and then you're in the middle. They look up to the firstborn as the child that will take care of the middle child and the baby. So the baby gets all the love. The first child gets the respect and expectation, and you're in the middle now, struggling for your connection because the baby's getting the love, the firstborn is getting the respect, if I could put it in that way, and so you end up wanting to do harm to yourself because you feel lonely. Let's continue.
what's showing up in your belief system is not your present situation, but your childhood emotional experience. And like I said before, in the present we can heal. No matter what happened then, we can heal in the present. So the first thing I would ask a person like that is, are you willing to consider that healing is possible for you? Or have you totally given up? By the way, a person who's totally given up wouldn't be telling you this. Because when people talk this way, whether they know it or not, they're asking for help. If they weren't asking for help, they wouldn't say anything. They just slink off of their own and isolate themselves. And
True.
as some people do. So anybody who speaks the way that you just cited is already, whether they know it or not, they're looking for help. And if that's the case, then they can be helped. And so that's the second point is, don't try and solve this on your own. We're human beings. We're creatures that evolved in connection and community. You're not alone with this. It may feel like you're alone, and you certainly might feel lonely, but you're not in fact alone. Millions feel exactly the same way. And they're not crazy, and you're not crazy. Those beliefs and feelings are normal responses to abnormal circumstances. So that's how I began working with the people, with a person with that mindset.
And I guess to take this one step further, I've heard you talk about like that one of the main problems with society today is that a lot of people who have mental health struggles and they're struggling with situations like this where they feel stuck and they can't get out of their own way at times. They feel like people are against them. They're dealing with trauma, and then they might go see somebody who's not trained in trauma. They don't have the experience. Like, how can somebody begin to take that path and make sure that they're finding somebody that is trained in that, and then also that they're able to self-regulate themselves when needed?
Well, that's a huge question because unfortunately, look, I've been through medical training. I'm a physician, and the average physician never hears any of the stuff I just talked about. The average psychiatrist doesn't get any training in trauma. They learn something about PTSD, which is a specific form of trauma, but they don't learn about the traumatic basis of depression and anxiety and ADHD, and they learn nothing about it. So that it's very difficult to find good help within the medical system. Now, many therapists also don't get any such training. There's a lot of therapists that are designed only to change your beliefs and your behaviors, but not to address the fundamental reasons for those behaviors. So a lot of psychologists trained in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or dialectical behavioral therapy, a lot of them are not really, and I know this, believe me, I know this, they just don't know much about or anything about trauma. Then they can't help you with the fundamental wound that you're carrying. They can help you with the manifestations, and that's not useless, but they can't help you heal at your core. So then,
You know, years of feeling lonely can cause depression. It can cause you to act out with some aggression. Like he said, you're calling out for help. But the way you're calling out for help, other people may not understand. But you know, there are people that they prefer being alone. They prefer to be in solitude. Writers are like that. Like when someone wants to write a book, they will go in solitude. They want to be alone. Right? It is a difference with being alone and being lonely. That emotional feeling, emotional perception can cause long-term effects where it causes deep depression. All right? So just understand that the difference is the words are similar, but there's a stark difference between being alone and being lonely. Alone and loneliness are far apart. But let's continue. Hear what they're saying.
and there are therapies that are deeper than that. There is body-based therapies such as somatic experiencing, developed by my friend and teacher Dr. Peter Levine. There's sensory motor psychotherapy developed by Pat Ogden. There's EMDR that works for some people. There's internal family systems, or IFS, developed by my friend and colleague Dr. Richard Schwartz. There's compassionate inquiry, which is based on my work, and I train therapists in that method. There are other names I could mention. There's Lawrence Heller, and his work and his students. So what you have to look for is somebody who's trauma informed and is willing to work with you, not just on your behaviors, but on your core wounds, of which the behaviors are symptoms.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because, like, in my own experience, I mean, I've struggled off and on with my mental health over the years. I mean, I've told you a bit about my story in our last conversation. And, you know, when I would go, there wasn't like a lot of talk about my childhood. It was just like, all right, you're having some anxiety. Cool. Like, here's a pill. And then I would just take it and I would just think, okay, this is going to cure my anxiety. And then I would realize, like, it's not really.
You know, that's what happens. That's what happens. You're feeling loneliness and you seek medical help. You go talk to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, seeking medical help. And one of the first things that they want to do is give you medication. Right? They want to put you on a pill. When sometimes depression is caused from lack of magnesium. Some people don't know that. Lack of magnesium. Certain times your body needs certain things like zinc, magnesium, potassium, iron. Right? You feel lousy, you feel lethargic, you feel groggy. You need iron. So you get some beets and juice it and drink it. So sometimes when you feel a bit of that feeling of loneliness, your body might be missing some kind of mineral. Right? Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Let's continue.
I'm still getting anxiety. I'm still struggling, like, what's going on with this? And it wasn't until I understood, like, my past and my trauma and how that was all related to what I was experiencing in the present, that things were able to change. And so let's just say that somebody has now, they found somebody they're comfortable with that's helping them heal their trauma and change their present and their current behaviors and patterns and that sort of thing. And then they go down weeks down the road, months down the road, and they're on the up and up, but get triggered, or they experience a situation where they're like, oh my gosh, like I thought I was getting better. Why is this coming up? What's your advice to people who are dealing with triggers when they're on the road to recovery from trauma?
Well, there's two ways to ask that question that you just raised. Why is this coming up? Is that a question? What is it actually?
What is this teaching me?
No. When you say, why is this coming up like that? That's not a question. It's a statement. It's a statement that says, this shouldn't be happening to me. Okay? Now, you ain't going to learn anything that way. But if you actually ask it, I wonder why this is coming up. Now you can learn something. If I came to you and said, why are you doing this? How would that feel to you?
I would probably get defensive and I would just feel like a little ashamed.
Exactly. But what if I said, I wonder why you're doing this?
It would force me to think a little bit and practice the pause and say,
well, I don't know if it would force you, but at least it would invite you, right?
Right.
Yeah. Now, so that's the first point, is how should we ask this question? It's a good question, but we have to ask it as a question, not as a statement of resentment or resistance. That's the first point. The second point is use the word trigger. Really great word. Now, if I showed you a rifle with a trigger, how big a part of the rifle is the trigger?
It's very small.
Very small. For that trigger to set off anything, what there has to be? There has to be a mechanism to deliver ammunition. There has to be ammunition. There has to be an explosive charge. When I get triggered, let's say you say something to me and I get triggered. What you said was a very small little thing. I'm the one who's got the explosive charge and the ammunition. You didn't cause me to do that. If I didn't have that ammunition explosive charge, you could say whatever you want. And I'd just sit here saying, I wonder why he's saying that.
That's true, because sometimes when someone is going through something, asking for help or thinking about how to ask for help is the furthest things from their mind. They're screaming out. They want help. Think about some of these people that go out and they're overly aggressive or overly flamboyant, or they put on this costume, right? And notice that people that put on, like, they make their hair a certain color, pink, blue, yellow, bleach whites, and they put on makeup on their face and extra long nails, and the guys will dress a certain way and they act out with aggression, or they're asking for help. I believe that they're going through a stent of loneliness or long-term emotions of isolation, emotional isolation. You can't see it physically, only by the way they dress, only how they cosplay. Then you'll see that they're asking for help. And sometimes you are like, what's wrong with that person? Why they dress that way? Why are they so aggressive? Why as soon as you ask a question, they snap? They're asking for help. But they don't know to ask for help, so they become very defensive. And you have to wonder, you can either give the same energy, or you can step back and say, hey, I wonder what's going on. But most of us are not emotionally intelligent to figure that out, to come to that conclusion. So the natural instinct is to react with aggression if aggression is being given out. Right? And sometimes you just have to say, all right, man, I don't know why you're being like this. And they will be more aggressive sometimes, even if you try to back away. They will come at you because you said something that touched a nerve. And whatever they're feeling inside, they lash out and causes terror on the world, right? Earlier I mentioned how some of these stabbings and shootings are going along. I just saw on the news that yesterday, day before yesterday, that in West Palm Beach Gardens, a mentally ill man stabbed and killed a woman inside of a Barnes and Noble. And if you saw his outlook, his hair, his beard, his facial, you can see that this guy have been going through loneliness, psychological depression, and he's probably been asking for help a long time, and people probably been shunning him, right? And then one day, he just gave in to the violence, the animalistic nature in him, and he did something, boom, and someone loses their life, right? Someone is in the schools, and they're probably been picked on, bullied, and they act out. But they might have been telling someone, they create a manifesto, send text messages, buying weird stuff that they probably never bought before, start reading articles of how to make certain kind of dangerous devices. They find ways. But maybe someone haven't been listening all along. So what they do, they now go out and cause havoc on an entire school. Right? Emotional trauma, loneliness, psychological issue, mental conditioning, mental anguish cause deep loneliness, and sometimes that deep loneliness have a very severe effect on other people. Let's continue.
So triggering is a great opportunity to learn. When you get triggered, you could either focus on, resent, and resist the trigger, or you could say, what was I still carrying inside that I haven't looked at yet, that I haven't resolved yet? So if, I used to tell this story, we've been married 53 years now, my wife and I. So let's say 20 years ago, I might ask to sleep with her and she would say no, which is, nobody can ever believe that ever happened, but it did used to happen, And how would I respond? I would respond by going to a rage and curling into a fetal position and not even wanting to live, okay? Now, the trigger is the no that she said. The explosive is my belief that I'm being rejected and abandoned and not wanted, and that I'm an infant and helpless, which is what happened to me. Otherwise, if she says no, I can get curious. Are you tired, or have I done something to turn you off, or is there something you want we can talk about? Or I can just be disappointed and let go of it and say, okay, well, thanks, there'll be another day. So how I respond is not dependent on the external event. It's dependent on what charge I'm carrying. So triggers are wonderful times to learn about yourself. So if you ask the question, not why did I react that way, but, I wonder why I reacted that way. Now, there's a whole lot of learning to be done. So that's what I call compassionate curiosity, where we're actually curious about ourselves, but not in a self-judgmental way, but in a compassionate way. This brought up the pain of rejection. Obviously, I'm still carrying that wound. Well, let's look at that, because it's not happening in the present.
I'm glad you brought that up, and that we have to change the language and how we talk to ourselves during those moments, because for me personally, I'm extremely hard on myself. So
Yeah. That part. Sometimes I talk to certain friends, like, especially I hear it a lot with women. They would refer to themselves as stupid. Like, I'm so stupid. I'm dumb. Right? Like, and I'm like, why would you tell yourself that you're stupid or you're dumb? right? Men do it as well. For the life of me, what you speak out of your mouth, and I'm guilty sometimes because I've said certain things and I'm like, why did I say that? So because I know that words have power, there's power in the tongue. And you can tell someone something. You can tell someone something. And that thing that you said to that person is hurtful. And you see the way that they react. But when you say those very same thing to yourself, you don't react to yourself. Some people do. Some people do. Some people bang their head against the wall, slap themselves. But for the life of me, I can't understand why someone would call themselves a jackass or say, I'm effing stupid. Why would you do that? You are casting a spell. Think about it. The word spelling. 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 Drop the ing, right? Make it just a verb. And you casting a spell on yourself. So you have to stop calling yourself stupid. Sometimes we say it in jest. He ain't so stupid. Or that's a stupid statement. If you say that's a stupid statement, you're not saying the person is stupid. You're saying what they're saying sounds stupid. But if you say to the person, you're stupid, that is a different mode. Right? So loneliness have different anecdotal ways of presenting itself that you might not really look at as serious because it's minute, it's one off, but other people really go in and say very disparaging things to themselves and other people. As I evaluate this conversation, I realize that a lot of the times we react. Anger is not the underlying issue. Loneliness is the underlying issue. Remember, being lonely versus being alone is different. Being alone is a choice because you just want to be by yourself. Being lonely is psychological isolation. You don't really want to be by yourself, but somehow you feel alone, even while you're around people. And they could be laughing, joking, having a great time. You could be at a bar with friends, having some brewski, and they're laughing it up, telling jokes. You could be at a comedy club, and the comedian is telling jokes and everybody's laughing, but you're sitting psychologically, you're lonely. It happens. It really does happen. Be mindful of how you speak to yourself. The tongue is a powerful weapon. It casts spells. And if you're not careful, those spells can become a fixture in the mind and you start believing your own rhetoric. Be mindful of how you speak to yourself and others. Let's continue.
So that like voice that you were saying, like, you know, like, why is this happening or why is it doing this to me? Like, that's something that I've said in my life very, very frequently because of the fact that I'm really hard on myself. I sometimes, when something doesn't go my way or when I get triggered or bothered by something, even though I've done a lot of work on myself, I'm so hard on myself because I'm like, gosh, like I'm better than this. I know I should be doing better than this. So that was really eye-opening for me. So thanks for sharing that.
Well, and you know, that voice in your head that tells you all that stuff. In this book, I actually talk about getting into a relationship with that voice because this is what I call a stupid friend, you know? Because at some point, that voice came along when you were quite small See, if you were suffering as a kid or things weren't going well, there's two assumptions a child could make unconsciously. One is
Mm-hmm.
the world is dangerous. My parents don't know how to love me, value me. I can't trust
Mm-hmm.
anybody. I'm all alone. I'm going to suffer in this world. The other belief unconsciously is there's something wrong with me, and maybe if I work hard enough, I can fix it. Now, which belief is more protective for the
Earlier, I said something about the middle child. The first child, when that first child is born, they get all the attention because that's the first child. The second child is born, they get all the attention. That's the second child. The third child now is born, and the baby gets all the attention. The first child gets like the respect or expectation that that child is going to be taking care of his brother and sister, right? And the baby now is getting all the love, and you're in the middle trying to find where you belong, right? So that part. Let's continue.
child, do you think?
The second one is more protective.
Exactly. So it came along as kind of a friend to keep you going. It's a friend. I say it's a stupid friend. The reason I'm joking when I call it stupid, but the stupidity comes in because it doesn't learn that you're no longer that child. It keeps giving you the same message. So my suggestion, Doug, is next time you hear that voice, say hello to it and say, thank you. You know what? Because ask yourself, how old is that voice? I mean, how old were you when it first came along?
I mean, I was young because
I love this. I love this because I am telling you personally, I am telling you, sometimes I have to evaluate myself. I wake up in the morning. Let's say I wake up like 5 and I'm laying in the bed and I have these thoughts going on in my head. And I'm like, why am I having these thoughts? Right? And I know many of you experience it. Like you wake up and you're like, you have these thoughts. And sometimes you meditate and people say, hey, do you meditate? Yeah, I meditate. What do you meditate about? And sometimes you're very candid and you say what you meditate about. And sometimes it's personal. You don't really want to talk about what you're meditating about, right? But you have to wonder, that voice, that thought, where is it coming from? From days gone by, years gone by, from you were a child, something a sibling might have said to you, something your parents might have said to you, one or both of your parents might have said to you. So those thoughts still lingers on in the mind. I said this in having conversation with my daughter recently. I said, do you think your thoughts are yours? She said, yes. I said, no, absolutely. We are all programmed, and some of the things that we say and the motions that we enact and react to certain things is because of programming. If you were, let's say you are a European and you have a friend or a colleague that's from Africa, and you grew up in Europe and then you moved to Africa, the cultural differences are going to be a stark cultural difference, and vice versa. However, let's say you grew up in Europe and you're originally from Africa, ancestral roots are from Africa, but you grew up from a child in Europe around a group of people that are very European. Do you think that you are going to be African minded or European minded, and vice versa? You are where you're from. You are what you eat. You are what you consume. That's just how it works. Right? The dichotomy right there is very interesting when you actually know and see and observe and you can understand the differences or the similarities. But let's continue.
because I remember there was this idea that I developed about myself from when I was a child that I wasn't good enough because I wasn't picked for sports teams. I got yelled at a lot.
So give me an age: 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I was in elementary school, I think.
Well, let's call him a 7-year-old. This voice is a 7-year-old kid telling you a story. So say hi to it. Hello, I got it. You're still working to make me better in this world, but you know what? Relax, kid. I can take care of it now. It's just a little immature little friend. That's all it is. It didn't come along to torment you. It came along to actually protect you.
Right. And I think
Right.
you're right. It's so important to have a conversation with that voice and then also change the conversation with that. And then along the lines of like, childhood, one of the things that my audience wanted me to talk to you about.
Let me pause it right here. Let me pause it right here. I love this. I love this. We were talking about that childhood, that little voice, right? Many of us, believe it or not, even though we're grown adults, we're still operating with a child mind. There's a saying that once you grow, once you become a man or become a woman, you leave those childhood things alone. You can decide to leave those childhood things alone. But you know what? Those memories from childhood are still in the back of your mind. You operate the triggers that you have, myself included, will reflect back on those thoughts and feelings unintentionally. When we act out sometimes, you've seen grown men and grown women act out with irrational behavior. And you're wondering, why are they acting out this way? It's because that childhood, that child in them, from something that happened way, way back when they're very young, was triggered. Boom! And guess what happens? They act out. And you're like, why? This conversation is really interesting. Pay attention. It's really important that my thought for some of us reacting very aggressively, or sometimes we want to be by ourselves and we don't know why. We want to go lock ourselves up in a room or in a corner somewhere and we don't know why. It's because even though we're now a man or a woman, we are still resonating with our inner child. That childhood that never really left. Because remember, I must say this, that our eyes are the windows to the world. Our ears is the apparatus for the world to get into us. So there are two things working for or against us. Your eyes, based on what you see and allow yourself to consume, your ears, based on what you hear and allow yourself to consume, and then your mouth starts speaking, your body language start reacting based on what you allow your brain, your biological computer to contain. Our brain is like a reservoir. Before computers ever was a thing, our brain is the database, right? Our brain holds everything. Sometimes we may suppress memories, and we try so hard to suppress those memories. But you know what? Those memories take control of us, and it holds us hostage, and we can't let go. There are childhood traumas that I'm still dealing with, and I'm 100 years old. But we have to learn to compartmentalize. If we can compartmentalize and work through those emotions, those traumas, we can come out to be a meaningful member of society or a degenerate member of society. But you have to seek help, because being alone is far different from being lonely. Let's continue.
More in depth is like parenting, and that parents are having a hard time right now, I think, with their kids growing up in this world that is hard. You're easily distracted, you're easily addictive, you're easily on your screen all the time. Like, what
True.
advice do you have for parents who are raising kids in this world today so that they can, raise them to the best of their ability?
It's very difficult to raise kids these days because we're not living in the way that human beings evolved. Like every animal evolves in a certain environment and context and is suited to that environment and context. If you want to understand elephants, don't study them in a zoo. Study them out in a forest or where
Very
they live.
true.
And human beings, we no longer live in the environments even close to it in which we evolved out there in nature, in small groups connected to each other. Parenting kids used to be a group activity. It happened in the tribe, in the clan. Parents had
It takes a village to raise children. It takes a village to raise children. I remember when I was young, my aunt, the neighbor next door, right, the teachers, the church members, all of them could spank me. Right? The principal would spank me. And my mom would then come to school. Boy, what did you do? Mom. I sent you to school to learn, not to get in trouble and get in fights. And she would whip my behind in front of the entire school. And then I would be ridiculed for days until another child did something, and then they would get their behind whipped in school. Right? And my mom was a cop, so she didn't play that. Right? So it is very hard to raise children nowadays because most children have a computer, a tablet, a phone in their faces. And the information that's out there, when I was young, 100 years ago, to now, children that are 10 years old are looking up things on the internet that I learned a few years ago. So by the time they get to my age, they're going to be way ahead. Right? And then we have to think about AI, artificial intelligence. It's taking jobs. Right? For instance, I just watched a clip of a video and I saw robots on stage with a recording artist dancing. They have no instructions and they're moving with total autonomy around the other dancers and in unison with the other dancers on the dance moves, the human dancers, robots. So raising children is far different from when some of us was young, right? This generation what, X, is far different from Gen Z, from the baby boomers, and on from way back, right? Raising children is very difficult.
lots of support. Kids spent their whole day around their parents. It wasn't goodbye in the morning, hello in the evening, and most of our time is spent away from each other. That would never used to be the case, not throughout millions of years and hundreds of thousands of years. Now, we can't go back to that life, nor would anybody want to necessarily, but we have to understand what we've lost. So first of all, you have to understand a few things. The great Buddhist teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, who died about a year ago, he said that the greatest gift a parent can give to their child is his or her own happiness. So take care of your emotional states, because your kid is sensitive enough to be downloading your emotional states and make.
That's very true. That I have to 100% agree with. 100% agree with. Because my child is going towards being 18. And she's remembering bits and pieces from the time when she was like 6, 7, 8, 9, and even 10. And she's not necessarily in chronological order with her thoughts and pieces. So she's putting them together based on piece that she remember when she was 6, piece that she remember when she was 9, piece that she remember when she was 5, piece that she remember when she was 7, piece that she remember when she was 8 and 10. And so she's trying to piece everything together. And I'm like, no, these things didn't happen. And she's like, no, I don't believe they happened. I'm like, no, you don't remember. I remember because I was there. I had to be at the school talking to the principal. I actually observed you doing these things that you say you didn't do. And now you're angry because you said that I punished you for things that I shouldn't have because I was too harsh. And I'm like, no, I saw you doing these things. And I tried to stop you and you would not stop. Right? So raising children is very hard, right? So as a father, I have to make sure I reinforce her and let her know that I love her, right? And let her know that I love her, because when she go in those emotional tirade and she says that she used to make these weird statements, and I'm like, if you do that, do you think that you're going to be selfish? Right? If you decide to, when she used to make statement that she wants to off herself, I'm like, are you selfish? She's like, no, I don't think I'll be selfish. I said, you're our only child. And if you do that, you will leave us alone. What do you think I will go through, your mother will go through? Right? And so I always reinforce her and let her know I love her, even when I'm angry at her. Right? She's more stable minded now. But as she gets older, and as our children get older, even when they get older, we have to still be supportive of their psyche. Because this up here can snap at any time, any given time. Right? Let's continue.
Making them their own. So if you're stressed, unhappy, depressed, anxious, addicted, believe me, your kid is going to absorb all that and make it about themselves, that there's something wrong with them. So take care of yourself. Live a
True.
life that you can live with. And if you get the first 3 years right, by the way, you got it made. So when your kids are really small, consciously make the first 3 years as stress-free and as clear of psychological dysfunction as possible. That means work on your traumas. Work on your relationship with your partner, your spouse. That's the first thing. Beginning with pregnancy, by the way. Number one. Number two, understand what the needs of children are. Needs of children are for unconditional loving acceptance in the context of a secure relationship where the child doesn't have to work to make the relationship work. The acceptance and the regard should be unconditional. Allow the child to have all their emotions. Whatever the emotions are, let the child have them, understand them. Don't force them to suppress their emotions. I'm not saying be permissive with behaviors. I'm saying don't force the child to suppress their emotions. Don't tell them not to be angry. Don't tell them to cheer up when they're sad. Validate the anger, validate the sadness.
Wow.
These are essential brain circuits for such feelings. Nature gave them to us for a reason. Allow the child to experience them. That way they can stay connected to themselves. Thirdly, there's a need for spontaneous free play out in nature. Get the hell away from these devices. Don't give a 1-year-old an iPad or a cell phone. Get rid of the screens in your house when your kids are small. Have a screen in a locked room for yourself if you need one. But don't be phoning and texting and emailing around your kids, because the message they get is the device is more important than they are. Don't go for a walk with them and texting and looking at your cell at the same time. Don't give the kids these devices. They've been documentably shown to interfere with the healthy development of brain circuits. This has been shown on brain scans. So if I was raising kids today, I wouldn't let them near a screen for years. On the other hand, I would encourage them to be outdoors, be with them, play in nature, spontaneous creative play. So these are the essential needs of children. I talked about them in this book. They're difficult to provide in this culture, because if you do any of this stuff, you'll be an outlier. Because all your friends and all your kids' friends' parents will be on their cell phones all the time. So you have to make a decision. not to buy into the false values of this, what I call this toxic culture. So that's some basic advice, easily said, hard to achieve, but at least these are the goals that we need to be striving for. I wish I had known this stuff when my kids were small.
That's
The year is 1862.
Yeah. So, from way back then, when families were together, way back then, you just heard the year was 1862, and just understand that during certain times when we had the neighborhood raising children was totally different. Totally different. Very different. So, folks, very, very important. So, just understand that, as the thumbnail says, as you see the wording on the screen, be mindful of how you speak to yourself. Be mindful of the thoughts that you allow to resonate in your head, because it could cause you to be very lonely, and you have to make a solemn decision. Are you lonely, or you just want to be alone? Because loneliness, let's read the difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is a physical state of having no company. A neutral situation you can choose, while lonely is a painful emotional state of feeling disconnected or lacking meaningful connection. That's the difference between being alone and being lonely. So even when surrounded by people, you can enjoy being alone but feel lonely in a crowd, and you can be alone but feel content. As loneliness is about the quality of your connection, not just their presence. Folks, this was interesting for me to have, right? So whether the year was 1562, 1862, 1962, to now, 2025, the end of the year, times have changed, but back then, family was together, and now we don't have it. And we see that the underlying reason why many of the violent behaviors are happening is based on just evaluating and this conversation and listening to that piece. Loneliness might be the underlying reason for a lot of it. That might be the root cause of anger, because we have childhood trauma and we feel psychologically isolated. And then we develop so much resentment, and that resentment becomes anger, and that anger becomes indifference, where you don't care about anybody. You just go in automatic mode and just act and do the most vile things or say the most vile things. So just remember, Be mindful, because if you're not, you may harm people. And when you harm people, other people are harmed emotionally, right? So, with that being said, one, love and respects. And wherever you are in the world, I appreciate you for tuning in. I had actually left the phone open so you can call in, and no one called in, so I just let it ride. But when we have another show like this, you can call in at 1-844-788-6366. Please leave your comments, and I appreciate you. Remember, always question everything, because if you don't, you may fall for anything. All right? Thank you for watching, and hope you have a good holiday, a good rest of your day, good rest of the year. 2026 is coming in, and for those of you that are looking forward to doing the New Year's countdown for the new year, enjoy it when it comes. All right? Enjoy it when it comes. So, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. That one was a good one. I liked it.